Generation Z, the generation that comes after the millennials, is the most racially and ethnically diverse generation that the United States has ever seen. And this is important to you as a construction company owner, because if your company is going to succeed in the next 15 to 20 years, it's highly likely that you need to become more diversified. Because if you're not, you're missing out tapping into a vast pool of talent that can really positively impact your business. My guest today is Paul Robinson. He is the founder and CEO at ConstructReach. Paul's an entrepreneur and a thought leader. He has deep industry experience in construction, having worked as a construction manager at Target for a number of years. And he founded ConstructReach as a workforce development company which focuses in on diversifying the construction industry. In our conversation today, Paul makes the business case for diversity. We talk about how leadership in construction companies need to drive this diversity initiative and how they can do it in such a way so that it is sustained over a period of time. We talk about some of the roadblocks to diversity and how to overcome those roadblocks. And we also talk about how educators, owners, and contractors all need to work together in order to diversify the construction industry. I know you'll enjoy my conversation here today with Paul. You'll get some fresh perspectives that perhaps you haven't thought about before from an industry insider who understands construction and also understands the issues and challenges that are around diversity. So feel free to share this interview with other folks who you think may benefit from it. Stick around to the end. Paul gives some killer restaurant recommendations from St. Louis, including a place where you can get some toasted ravioli. We have links in the show notes to how you can get in touch with Paul. And again, feel free to share this interview with other people. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius and enjoy our conversation. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Paul, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It really is. I'd like to begin by talking about your journey in construction. Can you give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah. So I actually went to school for my profession of construction, which is it's kind of rare nowadays, right? Seems like you get a degree for one thing and then you go end up doing something else. But
you're right.
I went to school for construction project management, construction science management at Kansas State University. And Target came in, in the midst of all of these other general contractors, and they're doing presentations on their companies or what have you. And I was very intrigued by their presentation because I hadn't seen construction from an owner's standpoint, if you will,
right.
But very interested in that. And so I interned actually the summer before I graduated. And
with Target?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that experience, being able to kind of oversee multiple projects, having the ability to travel and be boots on the ground, kind of learn or what have you, but still be centrally located. And for me, when I was young, that was important for me. Like, where can I establish some roots?
Mm-hmm.
And so that opportunity was very attractive for me. And after that internship experience, I was awarded a full-time position. And so I started my professional career with him and was kind of moved up and became a construction project manager.
Okay. And you were with him for a number of years. Yeah. What caused you to move from Target to the endeavors you're involved in now with ConstructReach and other endeavors that you're involved in?
Yeah. So I tell you, it was quite the journey, man. And for me personally, when I was in college, right, pursuing my degree and having internships or what have you, within the construction industry, for me, I was also kind of coming into doing ministry as well. And so really active on campus or what have you. And so when I entered into my career, I started pursuing kind of my master's of theology or what have you, and did that. And over the course of maybe 6 years or so, I really began to kind of have the tug on my heart to move back to St. Louis, Missouri, which was my hometown, to be a tangible example and to be more engaged in community building and really trying to be an example, if you will, to my community, my peers, to just show a different way. And so that caused the transition for me. So I transitioned out of the construction industry, kind of more into ministry, community development and building or what have you, but still maintaining all of those relationships that I was able to establish just while in my professional career. And then you kind of fast forward a couple of years, there was an opportunity for me to come at the kind of consultancy level, if you will,
Sure.
just to talk through some of the challenges that the construction industry was facing that I was knowledgeable of because I came from that industry in regards to diversity and how do we begin to really be more present in the community or what have you, and how do we galvanize a younger generation and demographic to come into this industry. And so just from multiple kind of strategic sessions and meetings or what have you, I knew that the proposed solution demanded a more kind of industry-wide model. And that's how ConstructReach was birthed. And so that was around, I would say, probably early 20. Oh, wow. This time is going by fast now. Let's see, 2017, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. Why do you think there is a lack of diversity in construction?
Yeah, that is, it's a topic that carries a lot of weight. And it's not like we just arrived here, right? So it's always been a long-standing area of opportunity within the industry of construction. And you may get a response that's different based on who you talk to.
Right.
But, what we've seen over the course of so many years is that it's almost been a close-knit, if you will, industry where the culture and the environment hasn't necessarily been conducive to the success and the growth of minorities, right?
Okay.
And so there have been efforts in the past, but to really have that traction to where the industry at large begins to take notice and understand, okay, well, how do we begin to look internally so that we can put ourselves in a better position for its overall sustainability? And how do we begin to look at things differently in the past so that we can move forward? And so it's been a long-standing area of opportunity for a variety of different reasons, whether it's the lack of equity, whether it is, kind of more of the connections and kind of who do you know, and you may know just people that grew up with you or that look like you. And so it's a lot of different factors kind of played into the industry not being as diverse as it should have been and as it can be.
What do you think is the business case for diversity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been multiple studies now that show us there is a direct correlation to innovation and diversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have people to come to the table that are looking at the same set of circumstances from a different lens, right? Coming with different presuppositions, coming with different experiences, coming with different solutions, if you will, because they're seeing things and they're coming to the table differently, which drives innovation, which drives new ideas and new solutions, or contemplating new thoughts that you would not have if everybody kind of comes from that shared or similar background and experience.
Sure. It's interesting because I think you said something earlier that's very true. Let's say you start a company and you reach out to your immediate circle, you bring people in from that immediate circle, and as your company grows over time, that's one of the main ways that folks recruit people to their organization. How have you found the construction companies that are successful in terms of diversification? What sort of strategies do they pursue in order to accomplish that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, but it's very intentional relationship building,
Mm-hmm.
And it's understanding who do I need to establish relationships with, maybe at the community level. If you think about a contractor, sometimes they'll start in their own backyard, right? So
Yeah.
how do I become invested in this city in which we have a presence. And how do we begin to navigate different circles, right, that may not look like us or that may not look like the makeup of the industry, to establish relationships, right, to figure out, okay, where that talent is. And so it's very intentional steps to expand, if you will. I call it the backyard, if you will, for companies, and then allowing that same intentionality to span into markets in which you have an ongoing presence as well.
Okay, let's take another a different perspective for a moment, and let's talk about the educational piece. I got a bunch of kids, and one of them was talking to me yesterday about interning in an electrical company to learn how to become an electrician. What role do schools have in providing that base level of talent to construction companies in terms of this diversification initiative?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because those are one of the key components, and we call them stakeholders, right, within the construction industry pipeline. And I mean educators, right, by that. They play a significant role, and a lot of times they see themselves as those gatekeepers. They have all of this talent that is coming into their classrooms, if you will, that are depending on them to offer the insight and operate from an informed position to navigate them into adulthood. And when you think about a lot of public funding that that's been taken out of public schools for construction specific education, right? Because we saw that trend of more technology coming, but not taking into account that construction was still going to be in high demand and we still needed those same skill sets.
Right.
You have educators at large that really desire a closer relationship with the industry holistically. And so being able to come in and facilitate and close that gap, if you will, between industry and educators is crucial, because the industry is able to put educators in an informed position to speak about the opportunities that exist within the construction industry in a very updated and relevant way. Also, they're able to speak to their parents and their guardians, right, so that you can influence the influencer and help navigate young people to successful career pathways that exist within this industry.
So I think that addresses one of the issues, and I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of trends. Back in, let's say, the 70s, the 80s, shop in high school was something that was a reality, right?
Yes.
We get into the 2000s, and everybody's supposed to learn how to code, right?
Yeah.
And right. And then fair enough, learn how to code, but then or everybody has to go to a 4-year college. And, and that's all good. But I mean, you went to college for construction management. I went to college for history, just because back in the day, that's what you're supposed to do, is go to college and get a degree.
Yeah.
But how do you think at the high school level, particularly, do you see any trends where that shop emphasis is coming back? Or is it still, we've all got our head in the technology cloud, hoping that everyone's going to be a computer scientist?
Yes, you do see that trend happening now. And that's coming with the introduction of CTE, which is career technical education.
Okay.
And so you'll see this trend of different career pathways being introduced at the high school level. And what high schools are beginning to be very intentional about, and education at large, is that because they've seen the numbers, right? How much they invest into getting kids to college, and the amount that actually stay in there, right? And then, of course, you have debt coupled on that as well. But what you're beginning to see at the educational level is no longer having education and pursuing a college degree and success be synonymous, right? So a lot of times at the high school level, going to college and success, or a successful decision, right, were somewhat synonymous, not necessarily explicitly, but that was the environment. And then if a student wasn't college bound, that's where the industry of construction was presented. And so you're not necessarily presenting a career pathway that should be a preeminent choice in a very, appealing way, if you will. And so
it's
now
the default, if you can't do this, then you can maybe do that.
Exactly. And so within education, you have that being presented that way. And so now construction has taken on this persona that it's an industry that you fail into.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. In your experience, what are successful construction companies doing to build those relationships with the schools in their areas so that they can tap into that talent pool?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, they're working with ConstructReach.
Nice.
But yeah, it's hearing what educators have to say, and a lot of them are, pretty on par with what their needs are from city to city, from market to market, and that is, hey, industry, can you have more of an active role within my school district, right? Can you be more visible? Can you provide opportunities that lend itself to internships, curriculum assessment, if you will, so that our young people have the opportunity to be exposed to these opportunities, get a chance to test, right, whether or not they want to pursue that before they graduate, right, before time is up, where they have to make a decision, where life is pressing in on them. And so those construction companies that are very successful in being able to tap into that young talent, they've been pursuing those relationships on an ongoing basis at the educational level, to whether it's hosting brown bags, whether it is doing community outreach events and partnering with local schools to have that, sponsoring certain events or what have you. And so it's just making themselves known and present in a very organic way, to these young people, and then allowing them to get exposure to the different career pathways that the industry has to offer. And then also letting them know what steps to take based on where they are. And that's key.
That's really interesting. Something that I've seen, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, is that, a construction company, or let's say a local association, will get all excited about this kind of outreach. They'll try it for 6 months or a year. They'll put up a website. After a little while, the steam comes out of it, loses its juice, and you just kind of go back to what you were doing before. Why does that happen?
Yeah, well, you see that, and it tells you a lot. It tells you, right, how the company views the need for diversifying, and if it's something that is only done for a season, right? Then now you have to ask yourself, okay, well, why do it in the first place? And what was the end goal? Companies that really have a desire to be part of the solution, and sometimes the intention is good. So I'm not saying that everybody that starts something and then it kind of fades down did that on purpose, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's understanding the work that goes into being sustainable and sustaining something. So even from a relationship standpoint, right? How do we sustain these relationships at this level, and not let that energy die down, right? And so those are conversations that have to keep taking place from an internal perspective. And there has to be a vision for that company in place. And there has to be a problem statement that is attached to that vision, right? So if this is the preferred future, if we want to invest in young talent, and we understand that the young talent is the most diverse that it has ever been, right? But we also understand that the industry may not be ready to receive them. Then how do I make sure that my company specifically, is ready and has the culture that is welcoming to them? That's ongoing work.
Right.
And then how do we make sure, right, that we are intentionally attracting that talent, developing that talent, and then creating it in such a way to where there's an affinity for this industry and the one in which they had the opportunity with. And so when you cast that vision as a company, you have to say, okay, this is our preferred future, right? And the way that we're going to get there is from XYZ. This is the path that we see ourselves going down, especially when we need to get younger. We need to kind of build these succession plans. We need to get in front of a younger demographic. And the problem statement comes in where you say, you know what? And if we don't do that, right, then we cannot obtain that vision. And so you have to vision cast to everybody within that company so that they can understand maybe a change in direction or more intentionality that, the company is taken from an outreach perspective that puts the present into context and say, hey, this is where we all agreed that we need to go. Now you see these different initiatives, right, as a means to us getting there. And we have to make sure that we create the right infrastructure in place, have the right people that are championing that so that we can maintain that energy internally around that. And that has to be modeled by leadership. It has to.
Okay. So I want to talk about a couple of different things here. A question to ask here is, how can diversity be presented to a company in terms of encouraging people to hire folks from different backgrounds? How can that be presented in the most persuasive way for the people who are doing the hiring? And let me try and sort of parse a couple of different thoughts here, because you hit on something here where you talked about how the younger generation, your Gen Zers, the next 15, 20 years, the population of the United States is becoming way more diverse. And so the reality is that your workforce, if you're going to have a dynamic young workforce, it is going to be diverse. That's just the population reality.
Yeah.
And if you don't tap into that, then you're really missing out. So I'm wondering, what is the most persuasive way to present that to construction companies? Because sometimes I think when let's say, I know a bunch of white guys in their 50s and 60s, right? They run construction companies. They're good dudes, but really what they want to do is they just want to build work and they want to make money, right? Yeah. And so if I go to them and I say to them, you need to hire 4 women, 3 Hispanics, 2 African Americans, and an Asian American, they're immediately going to go like this. Mm-hmm. Just because they don't like that. They don't like to hear that. But if you come to them and say, dude, listen, let me just give you some demographic realities here. If you want your company to survive for the next 15 to 20 years, you need to change your mindset in terms of who you're hiring.
Yep.
Do you understand where I'm coming from there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're already alluding to that, right? Of how you present it in a persuasive way,
right?
Because you don't start with like, this is what you need to do. You don't start with, hey, let me prescribe to you what you need to do for your company. Right? Like that's the wrong way. You're starting off on the wrong foot.
Yep.
What you need to do is, and a lot of times I should say not need to do, but this is what we found to be a better starting point, right? Yes. Is to understand where they want to go from their perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And what type of company, what type of legacy do they want to build, right? Mm-hmm. And what type of legacy do they want to leave? And when you think about company owners and leaders, for me, and maybe I come in an unconventional way, right? But this is how we come into our clients, right? It's looking at leadership as more than just a title, but it's more so responsibility.
Okay.
It's not about the title, right? It's like, yeah, you have this title, but that title means that you have a responsibility. So as an employer, how do you get a chance to lean into that authority and into that ability to change the trajectory of not one person's life and not a family's life, but if that's replicated, then communities, right? How do you lean into building differently, right? That to where it becomes more significant, that plays into the type of legacy that you can leave, right? And so when we begin to introduce it like that, and understand that, hey, you're in a very fortunate position to be leading others. But when you're leading others, that means they're looking to you for that direction. They're looking to you to get them to where maybe sometimes they don't even think that they can go, right? That begins to be very inspirational, transformational, what have you. And then you begin to allow people that have gone through that experience, right, to be another voice that ripples into areas that you can't get to. Yep. So when you think about being intentional with bringing in young talent, and yes, it's going to be diverse, as time goes on, because of course, that's just the makeup and that's where we're going. Yep. But if you lean into that and say, you know what, hey, how do we present this? And this is one of the questions that comes up as well. we think that that is important. We want to do those things, but how do we do it in such a way to where we don't come off as this is just the season to do it, right?
Yeah. It's just, yeah. And see, and again, I'm just speaking frankly here, you go on LinkedIn or something like that, and you see these larger construction companies, and God love them. Some of them are my clients. I love them. But it seems like they're going through the motions kind of. It's like this marketing thing, where they talk about it for this month or that month. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Women in Construction Month, and no problem with that. Mm-hmm. But again, I think there needs to be a fundamental mindset within these companies, not just, well, we better do this marketing because that's what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And, it's funny because just the very nature of kind of how we operate, when you think about the industry and wanting to get right, like the right people for the project, you kind of say, okay, well, let's make sure that we're not just checking the box here, but how do we begin to really change the trajectory of this industry? And so for us, it's amazing because sometimes we have conversations where, and rightfully so, because I understand, it's all about being able to get the right people on the job so that you can execute that job, in the most efficient way and on time. Right.
Yep.
But one of the things that we start with before we even go out and look at the talent is we say, hey, okay, well, what are your DEI, policies and implementation? What's the internal character, if you will, of the company?
Right.
And then allow that, right? Once we get that to a place and once we begin to be more intentional about creating the culture within the company that is conducive to, a younger, diverse demographic being able to grow and thrive, let that be an outpour, right, of how you begin to go out and attract young talent. Right. Not just doing what's kind of sexy in the moment, right? Because when you come in and there's a different experience than what you promote, now you perpetuate the negative connotation. And what I do as a young person that thought it was something and turned out to be something else? I go back and tell everybody else, don't you go in there.
Yeah, because people know when you're fronting.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So then let me ask you this then. The younger people are generally speaking more comfortable in a diverse environment because of the reality of the diversity that the new generation, the younger generations, the makeup of the generations presents. So you make an emphasis about how important leadership is in a construction company. And so let's say I'm a white guy in my 50s and I want the diversity. I'm positive towards it, but I know I'm a white guy in my 50s. So I want to provide that leadership, but I also know that there's a gap between me and 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, folks in high school. What do I need to do there? Do I need to bring in someone to head up that initiative? How should I approach that, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because there's a yes and a no to what you suggested. Do you bring in a person to head up that initiative? And sometimes that's a yes, but it's all about how you do it and how much authority and decision-making power you give that individual as well. Because sometimes, and what we've seen in the past, is that they would get that person and that's just the figurehead, right?
Yeah.
Where it looks the part, but they don't really have the space and the authority to really influence change outside of their position,
Right.
So you have to do that well, and you have to say, okay, this is what I'm empowering you, if you will, to do and to help us get to where we need to go. Again, that is that diversity at the decision-making level that does drive that innovation, right? And so you have a different perspective, different thoughts, and different ideas and different approach, right? To getting where, let's say, ultimately that middle-aged white owner wants to go, right?
Yeah.
So that can be done that way. Another way could be bringing in somebody, right? I mean, that's where you have. I mean, that's kind of the value that we like to bring in, right? If an owner doesn't have anybody close enough to where they can bring in from an internal perspective, right? Then who can they begin to partner with from an external perspective to come into the confines of their company and help them get to where they decide to go in the right way.
Right. How can you tell? So you go into companies, just give us, we'll go into more detail, but just give us the quick, the 30-second of what you do at ConstructReach for a GC or a sub.
Yeah. So we come in, understanding, of course, everything that we're talking through right now. So we formalize internship and new hire programs. So we create a framework right there, establishing the right type of relationships with educators, organizations, or what have you that have access to the talent that you need. And then we also create internship and new hire curriculum as well that takes into account that younger demographic. And then we train up those leaders or direct managers as well. And then we implement DEI policies and carry out those implementation strategies to make sure that there's continuity. So
let's talk about that real quick then. How important is that onboarding piece? Because you think, like everyone knows the first 90 days when you hire someone is critical. Tell us about that onboarding piece.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the areas where we really like to lean into and rest a while, because the onboarding piece is very, very, very critical. That's the first, if you will, introduction to who you are, right? And so the onboarding process has to be very intentional. The onboarding process has to start actually before the first day, and maybe a couple of weeks before that. But it's making sure that you start off on the right foot. Hey, let me make sure that I have prepared for you, that I'm showing you that I prepared for you. Not only just with making sure that you have the equipment, making sure that you know who your leaders will be, but it's also understanding, hey, what do you wish to get out of this as well? So it's being in tune to who's coming through that door, the skill sets that they have, where they're trying to go, and making sure that you are creating a pathway for them to succeed, and then having the structure in place that allows you to measure that experience, because you can't change what you don't measure.
Right.
And so that onboarding process is very, very, very critical.
So what I'd like you to do then is I'd like you to think of two construction companies and two groups of leaders in a construction company.
Okay.
The one company, and you don't have to name names here, but I'd like you to try and think of real companies. The one company has been successful in this diversity initiative in pursuing it. They may not be at the end of the journey, but they're at least on the right path. Okay. Another has made a genuine attempt and yet has failed or has not carried it through. Tell me about the difference between the two.
The difference between the two is, and maybe this could be a new concept or what have you, but, and of course, this is hypothetical right now, but this is what comes to mind for me. I think the difference between the two is the leader and the company that has done well.
Yeah.
Not stopping and not giving up at what could have been defined as a loss.
Okay. So how do you help people through that? Because, I tried, I put money in, I put time in, I've got good intentions. It's not working. So in business, if it ain't working, then you're going to go on to something else that is. You know what I'm saying? So, So how do you help people through those hurdles?
Yeah, it's being able to define small wins. If you don't have small wins and all you have is the goal, the end goal in mind, then you're gonna feel deflated, right? And if you don't understand like the amount of energy and confidence and peace of mind at times that you get when you have identified and defined what a win looks like in the context of the great scheme of things, then you're going to feel as if you're failing, right?
So let me ask you then, in the context of a diversity initiative, give me a couple of examples of what you would define as a small win that someone should focus in on.
Oh yeah. Develop one relationship, right, with a demographic or school, or let's just label it as one school, right? Not even a school district. Let's develop one relationship this year that we did not have last year.
Right.
That's very small.
Right.
That can be something, and that relationship, right? And say, okay, well, this is what I want. And you build off of that. If that relationship comes, then this is what I would like to do based on that relationship.
Okay.
And then there's other, right, small wins.
Yeah.
So let's say if there's 5 things that you want to be an outcome of that relationship, right? And let's say you fail on 4 of those things. That's where a successful company doesn't give up, because you know what? I've identified 5, and the 4 didn't work, but that 1 did. Now we build on that and keep going. So it's understanding the value of defining what small wins look like, so that you can keep going and not necessarily give up just because the entire thing didn't work out the way that you planned.
Okay, so should a company set specific diversity goals?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What should and should that be the same in every company, or how should it look in different? Okay, so talk about
it should not be the same in every company. And that's what, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that, if you don't understand like your context, your area, and what you have direct access to, then you may set the same goals as if you just have an abundance that's like right in your backyard, And so you have to understand, okay, what do I have access to? How much does that take? What effort goes into that? What resources goes into that? And then how do I base my goals off of that? Not necessarily letting myself off the hook, but how do I give 100% with what I have, and then attach goals to that? So yes, goals are very important, but they do have to be relevant for where you are.
Okay. So Paul, tell us a little bit more about ConstructReach then, specifically what it is that you do, how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So we are a workforce development consultancy, and this conversation, of course, brings that to the surface, where we seek to address the underrepresentation of minorities within the construction industry, and try to create alignment between all stakeholders, right? So that's from a brand and corporation standpoint, to engaging, being socially responsible or what have you, operating within the construction industry because of the sheer amount of physical locations that they have. Of course, they're employing the industry to help them do that. And so making sure that there is alignment, that there's a programmatic structure in place for how they go about building their facilities and or stores. And then at the general contractor level, it is consulting them as well with, like we've talked about here, their DEI strategies, implementation, recruitment, and internship and onboarding curriculum and professional development.
Yep. Okay. And where can we reach you? Where can someone find you guys?
Oh, yeah. So you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, ConstructReach, all one word, ConstructReach. Very easy to find. We try to make sure that we maintain an active social media presence because we know that that's key. So yes, or our website, constructreach.com.
Excellent. And we'll put links in the show notes. So let's just wrap this up.
Okay.
I'm a GC or I'm a sub. I'm listening to this. And what are the first 2 or 3 steps that I need to take in this journey?
Oh, wow. I think the first step is looking inward and saying, and when I say inward, it could be just that owner, or it can be with that team, right? Your team, and saying, hey, where do we want to go?
Yep.
And what do we need to do to get there?
Right.
And if you're looking to be sustainable, if you're looking to build a legacy, if you're looking to be part of the solution, if you're looking to be younger, then, of course, I would say, hey, well, reach out to ConstructReach, start a conversation, or work with someone that can help you begin to make steps into getting where you said you want to go.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So, Paul, you're in, St. Louis?
Yes, St. Louis, Missouri, right in the middle. Yeah.
All right. So I'm visiting St. Louis. Where do I have to eat?
Oh man,
I know that's a tough question. I don't want to limit you here, but immediately my mind goes to barbecue. But I don't want to limit you.
Yeah. Oh wow. Let's see. Okay. Oh man, I wish my wife was on the phone because she is a foodie. So, from a pizza standpoint, right? There's Emo's. Yes, Emo's Pizza. That is like a staple here in St. Louis.
Okay.
From, let's see, one of the St. Louis kind of Oh man, it's really special here is toasted ravioli. You may not see that on any other menu, but toasted ravioli is a must-have. Let's see, where
can you get the toasted ravioli?
Oh man, you can actually get it from Imo's. You can get it from. Let's give a good restaurant. Oh, why is it escaping me now? Oh my goodness.
That's all right.
I know. Maybe it'll come back to me. I'm trying to think of one good one because, of course, you see the toasted ravioli on a lot of different menus, but I want to give you a very good one. I'll come back to it. Let's see. From a barbecue perspective, you've got Sugar Fire, you've got Pappy's, you've got Salt and Smoke.
Salt and Smoke, huh?
Yes, yeah.
And you say Sugar Fire?
Yes, I would start there.
Oh, Sugar Fire. Okay. All right. So we're going to put links in the show notes to Sugar Fire and to Imo's if you're ever in St. Louis.
Yes.
Awesome. Paul, again, I really appreciate you joining us. We're going to put links to ConstructReach in the show notes. And I appreciate the conversation. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I do wish you the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
All right. Take care.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private, invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.